Isa. I'm 7 years old, and I'm in first grade.
Smile. I would like you to read a story to me. Please do your best reading. If you do not know a word, I will read the word for you. Keep reading until I say stop and be ready to tell me all about the story when you finish. Hold on. Put your finger under the first word. Ready? Begin.
The sun is racing, telling the bees it's time to get busy.
Busy.
The worker bees
Leave the hive.
They are looking for nectar, a sweet liquid, pollen, and yellow dust. The bees use these things to make food and honey. One bee finds a garden and climbs inside a flower. It drinks nectar. The nectar is stored in a sack in the bee's
Stop.
as it walks around. Pollen sticks to its legs.
Okay, stop. Now tell me as much as you can.
The bees.
Hold on. From the story. Ready?
No.
Begin.
The bees like to get honey from the flowers. One bee found a whole garden and they stick the pollen to their legs. And the managers that get the honey from the bees leave them.
Okay, is that all you remember?
No. And I think that's all.
Okay, good job. That was amazing. Awesome. Let's talk about scores a little bit. So as you saw, I noted how many total words. I bracket where she ended, and I do this scoring right after the test happens. I don't do it in front of the child, but I do it right away once they leave my table because I can make notes of the errors they made and things like that. So Isa was able to read 60 words per minute, and she had 6 errors, which means that she was able to read 60 words per minute correctly. Because of this, I noted all that in here. Sometimes I do write what errors they made, which gives me an idea of what to do for my teaching next. In this case, I didn't have time, and that's okay. I can note it after. Like I know B's and D's is an error that she's consistently making. After I figure out how many words correctly she's reading, I need to look at her accuracy score. The way that I do this is, I take the errors she made, in this case is 6, and then I divide that by the words per minute that she have, which was 66, and then I multiply that by 100 and subtracted by 100. It's just a formula that I have, and this is the one that I use. I'm sure there's other formulas you can use, but her accuracy score was 91%. So that tells me that this is actually a good passage for her instructional level. It is honestly one of the harder ones in first grade because it's nonfiction about bees and nectar. There's big words in here, liquid. And then I calculate her retail score, which you saw me crossing the numbers. And what I did in here was that every word she said that was related to the passage, I just cross it. So if the child says the bees are making nectar, then in my head I just think the same words. The bees are making nectar. And then this score in first grade, really, you don't test this yet because they're learning how to read. So comprehension is not there. But I feel like I needed that information for Isa because she's starting to become a fluent reader. And then quality of response, it's basically how good, how solid her retell was. You can see here that you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 scale. And I gave her a 2 because it wasn't really in meaningful sequence. This is it depends of the person that's testing. With this one, it gives me an idea of things that we can work on. So I know that for her, sequencing will be the next focus for instruction. So here are the total scores for that reading that she did this time. The next step is for me to look at the chart with the overall goals for Dibels Next. So when looking at this chart, I'm going to focus on the first grade scores, middle of the year. So when I go and I look up, the goal for oral reading fluency is at 23. So in that sense, she's reading 60 words. She's ahead of that goal. Accuracy score is expected to be at 78%. We have a 90% there, so that's really good. And as you can see, we don't test retail, so there's no goals for that, but I'll probably end up using the end of the year scores. So I'm going to write these scores down next to the actual scores, so I have them for reference. Here you can see how I wrote the scores next to them, so anytime I need to look back, I remember these numbers, and they can help me draw conclusions or make decisions about this child. Okay, so let's talk about what you just saw. I was able to gather how many words per minute my daughter is reading, which is with oral reading fluency assessment. I was able to gather accuracy score out of those words that she's reading. How many errors is she having? I was able to gather her comprehension skills. How much of those words that she was able to read is she able to understand and able to tell me. And I was also able, which it didn't have a goal, but to see how good was that retail for her. So in 2 minutes, I was able to gather all of that information with one student. Obviously, this is amazing. And that's why I like Dibels so much. It's a quick measure that's effective, that allows you to listen to the child. It is individually administered, so that's would be challenging for a classroom teacher, but it's not impossible to do. And it allows you to see so much from a reader. So that's why I recommend this measure. I was able to gather so much information. Dibels stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, and it's comprised of 6 measures that function as indicators of the essential skills that every child must have and master to become a proficient reader. So I only showed you oral reading fluency, and I also did the comprehension part of it, but I did this one with my daughter because first grade is the first year that a child is able to be assessed in oral reading fluency. You can assess them early, but that's where the goals are, is the expectation is there, and it also goes from first grade to 6th grade. But if you're a kindergarten teacher, there are measures in here like letter naming fluency or phoneme segmentation fluency, or even nonsense word fluency that also apply to you and allow you to gather as much information as I was able to with oral reading fluency. There's also an assessment that I didn't show you. I'll probably do on another video, and it's called the DAZED assessment, and it's mostly comprehension. It's a little more complex, and it starts in 3rd grade. I absolutely love this measure because it's brief, it's efficient, it's individually administered, it's reliable, it's formative, it's standardized, it's valid, cost effective, and it's just amazing to be able to gather that much information that quickly for any child and their reading. As you saw, I was able to see some of the errors that I have to work with instructionally with Isa. B's and D's is an issue. She learned to read in Spanish before she read in English. So some of those errors are definitely ESL related. But I also was able to see that in her retail, she's able to tell me a lot about what she read, but it's not in sequence. So sequential order will be a good teaching step for her. We have universal screening measure in my district, and that's called ISIP, and they go in the computer lab and they get assessed, and it's a wonderful measure that gives me a ton of information about our readers. If I have any questions, because it is a computer measure, a lot of times we have inaccuracies when, the mouse is not moving fast enough, or little technical difficulties. So if I see that's an inaccurate measure, this is something I can do to kind of allow me to see, does this match? Is this really where we're at with our reading skills? Or if we are thinking about possible assessments with a diagnostician, an educational diagnostician, having more than one assessment to draw those conclusions is key. So for those students, we typically have their ISIP scores, Dibels scores, and then whether it's DRA or assessments done in the classroom. But the more assessments I have, at least 3, that's called triangulation, it's the just best way of really making good decisions for kids. So with Dibels, you can use them as a universal screener to see who's on level and who needs extra help. It also helps you identify areas of target instructional support. It allows you to monitor the at-risk students. So those students that you are doing interventions with, if you do Dibels for progress monitoring, that would be super helpful and reliable. So you could choose an accuracy score of 95% in 4 weeks, and you can assess the child every other week and see if they're making progress with that accuracy, or how many words they need to read in a certain amount of time. So if you teach students, not just in the classroom, but you're a SPED teacher or a dyslexia teacher or any kind of other support staff, an instructional coach, this understanding Dibels, how to assess the children and how to read the measures, is a very, very great place to start. So I hope this was helpful. I am going to talk about differentiation next week. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about Dibels, if you need me to email any of these documents, you can find them online. But I have them all downloaded. Just let me know. I am here to help, and I hope everyone have a wonderful weekend. All right. Bye.